God's put this burden on our heart to help. Let's help as many Americans, interpreters, their families, women and children that we can. And we've got a lot of credit over the last few months. I got recognized before Congress. I got the Bonhoeffer Angel Award. And the only thing I really accept credit for is the fact that when God put that burden on our heart, all of us were obedient to that call. And beyond that, we witnessed a divine miracle. I mean, 2 Corinthians 11:30 says, if you're going to boast in your weakness. And so I can certainly do that here.
Hey, folks, welcome back. Sometimes I really struggle to introduce a guest, particularly, well, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, if I think of them as a friend, I go like, oh, it's just my friend, Chad. And then I realize, well, that's not good enough. I've got to try to explain to my audience that doesn't know Chad, who is Chad? Before I even try to do that, let me say, Chad Robichaux, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Now,
it's great to finally be here.
You have you've been on this program via Skype or Zoom or whatever, but you've never been with us in the studio here in New York.
That's
so
right.
Thank you for coming. You're here principally to launch this book. Folks, I don't know, we're going to talk about something hard to believe stuff, crazy stuff, amazing stuff. The title of the book is Saving Aziz, How the Mission to Help One Became a Calling to Rescue Thousands from the Taliban. This is insane. Now, Chad, I mentioned that, you're the author of this book. Okay, so this is one of the most amazing rescue operations of all time. And we're going to talk about that. So you don't need more of an introduction than that. But I want to tell my audience a little bit about your background, how you got to be, doing what you're doing, and what are the highlights? I mean, for me, the fact that you were into mixed martial arts, like when did you get involved in that, and what was your greatest title as mixed martial arts champion? Yeah,
well, I started martial arts when I was 5 years old. I got a pretty rough upbringing, and my grandmother brought me to have a kind of positive influence in my life. And so I always, from a young age, I started in grappling-based martial arts, wrestling, judo, traditional jiu-jitsu. In 1995, I was introduced to Brazilian jiu-jitsu, which became my kind of core martial arts, mixed it with wrestling and boxing. And in 1997, I did my first amateur MMA fight. Not really looking to be an MMA fighter, just wanting to compete and represent the martial arts that I trained in. And in 1999, I turned professional. I did it on the side while I was in the military. My military unit and special operations leveraged that. I ran a lot of the martial arts programs for my Force Recon units. And then through that time of 1999 till my last fight, I think was in 2015, I did 20 professional fights. Amassed a record of 18-2. I won a world title. So not the local.
You won a world title?
Not the local neighborhood title. I wasn't the champion of my neighborhood.
To be MMA world title. Well, that's a big deal. And we could just talk about that. But your military background, you were in special ops. What, if somebody says, okay, what does that mean? Where were you in the special ops world? Right. How do you talk about, what do you say?
Well, I come from a long history of military folks in my family. My family started in World War II, 84 years of service. So World War II, Korea, my father was our first Marine, served in Vietnam as an infantryman. And then I was a Marine, did 8 deployments to Afghanistan, and both my sons are Marines. One of them went to Afghanistan as well. And in fact, one of them is on our international mission in Ukraine right now as a veteran. But I was a Force Recon Marine, which is one of two of the Marine Corps Special Operations units. They have both Recon and MARSOC. Force Recon is like the more premier Marine Recon unit. And then I had an opportunity to try out what's called the JSOC Task Force, Joint Special Operations Command Task Force. The Marine Corps does not have a JSOC contingent, but they allow Marines to go try out for either the Army's or Navy's JSOC unit and go participate and represent the Marine Corps there. So I was very privileged. In 2003, I tried out for the JSOC unit and went over to the Navy, and which is their premier special operations unit in the world, I believe. And I got the opportunity to be one of 6 Force Recon Marines at the time to represent the Marine Corps and serve at that unit for a period of 4 years and 8 deployments to Afghanistan.
Now, you are also a man of faith.
Absolutely, yes.
Now, when did that happen big time for you?
Well, after my 8 deployments to Afghanistan, some very very difficult times for me. Buried 15 friends and had.
Excuse me. You glance over that.
Yeah.
That is about one of the heaviest statements anybody could ever make. You said you buried 15 friends. That'll mess you up.
Coming back from those 8 deployments, I had a very difficult time. I had severe anxiety, depression, debilitating panic attacks. I was diagnosed with PTSD and went in a real downward spiral. I leaned on that MMA career because it was a great coping mechanism for me, but I never actually got well. And that ended with me finding myself 3 years later, separated from my family, facing a divorce, and alone in a closet with a pistol in my hand, made an attempt to take my life. And some amazing people intervened. My wife, Kathy, and a mentor in my local community. And this mentor that I met with introduced me to a relationship with Christ, and my life was radically changed. I found the path that he led me on through discipleship, discipling me for a period of about a year, led me to find restoration and hope again, and ultimately found purpose. And that purpose really manifested in a deep burden on my heart to share what I had discovered with others. And we started the Mighty Oaks Foundation, where I've been able to the last 12 years to speak to over 500,000 active duty troops at bases around the world. We've written a bunch of books and given away about 350,000 copies of our books. We have a recovery program called the Legacy Program. We have about 4,500 graduates of that program. It's a week long at 5 different ranches around the country. And we do about $5 million a year in programming for free to our troops and even pay for their travel for active duty, veterans, first responders, spouses.
So this is, just to be clear, Mighty Oaks Foundation. The website is mightyOaksPrograms.org.
That's right.
You're in New York in part
to see you.
To be here, but also to be on Fox and Friends this morning. You're getting the word out. The book is brand new, Saving Aziz, How the Mission to Help One Became a Calling for Thousands to Rescue Thousands from the Taliban. Okay. Most people listening don't know anything about this. Mm-hmm. What is the story?
Well, the story is President Biden made the announcement when immediately after he took office, he was going to do a full withdrawal of the United States military from the 20-year occupation of Afghanistan. I immediately had a problem with that, and I think anybody that understands the military did. A lot of your listeners may not agree with me at first, but if you hear me out, we should never have withdrew from Afghanistan. I'm not a warmonger. My family's been at war for a long time. If we could avoid war, we don't want to be there. But saying that the military it was in a 20-year war and it was an endless war is just not true. In 2018, we shifted from a conventional kinetic war with the Taliban and shifted to a support and advisory role with the Afghan National Army and Afghan National Police, participating with the entire international community to fight the Taliban in the mountains of Afghanistan and not in the West, not here in America. And it was working. This is the most strategic place in the globe between Iraq, Iran, Russia, and China. And it wasn't ours to give up. It belonged to the international community. It belonged to the Afghan government that we spent 20 years putting in place. And we didn't negotiate with our NATO partners, the international community, or the Afghan government. We only negotiated with the Taliban. And we gave that country up to our enemies, not just the Taliban, but China, Russia, Iran, Pakistan, ISI. And so I knew that was going to be catastrophic for national security and global security, but I also knew that it would be catastrophic for our allies.
That is what launched you on this mission.
Yeah, my job and at this task force was to be a singleton AFO, meaning advanced force operator, meaning I went out by myself in a singleton capacity to go ahead of my unit to build the clandestine infrastructure to put our assaulters on target to capture, kill bad guys. That means I need a local national assigned to me. Aziz was assigned to me as my interpreter. He became trained to be my teammate, vetted, polygraphed, trusted. And we operated in the mountains of Afghanistan and Pakistan, the two of us, for months at a time. And, he saved my life numerous times. I say that, but he probably saved my life every day. Like, don't walk there, don't eat that, don't talk to that person, right? If you talk right now, they're going to kill us.
There's stories in this book, because I heard these that night at the Mighty Oaks Foundation Gala. They're chilling stories, true stories of what you and Aziz went through together. And you talk about somebody having your back, folks. I mean, this is as real as it gets. The fact that you're sitting here alive is because of Aziz. Yeah. There's no question about it. And so you knew when this administration did what it did, they're coming after Aziz. They're going to torture and kill your friend.
We knew specifically he was targeted. And again, a guy that held his babies when they were born, ate in his home. It's my friend. And so we made a decision to go back and get him in spite of our military not doing the right thing. we want to stand up and do the right thing. I put together a team of about 12 former special operations veterans, and that led to not only getting Aziz, but getting 17,000 people. And,
Okay.
And it was a miracle.
We're going to tell that story when we come back. This is the Eric Metaxas Show. Check us out at metaxastalk.com, ericmetaxas.com. We'll be right back.
We live in a country with nearly 23 million veterans. Sadly, many of those who have served come home carrying the invisible scars of war. With 22 veteran suicides each day, these men and women often live in despair. Mighty Oaks Warrior Programs challenges these warriors to pursue a purpose beyond their service. By acknowledging the difficulties they face, we equip them to embrace a bright future. There is a solution to the brokenness experienced by so many. For more information or to be a part of that solution, visit us at mightyoaksprograms.org.
Okay, now we get to the heart of the matter. The book I'm holding, brand new, Saving Aziz by Chad Robichaux, my guest. How the mission to help one became a calling to rescue thousands from the Taliban. You're just explaining Aziz was that one who was left behind. Again, to sum up, the Taliban says, okay, America, you're gone now. So everybody who worked with you, who's our enemy, now they're going to pay, and we have the ability to make them pay. And this administration did nothing. And I'll tell you, it makes me so mad as an American. I would think make any human being angry and sick. But you somehow discovered that, tried to come up with a plan and came up with a plan. I mean, where do you start, Chad? Where do you start?
Well, we put together a team, former special operations veterans. And as we're putting this team together, I'm looking at it around the room, it's the most incredibly qualified people, Navy SEALs, Green Berets, Recon Marines, former CIA paramilitary officers from Ground Branch, very experienced guys. And we're going to get one family, Aziz's wife and 6 kids. And one of our team members brought up a great point about these 3,500 orphans that were left behind. And then we
3,500 orphans?
Yeah, and they were orphans of former Afghan National Army soldiers who had died in combat. And so we decided, hey, we have the ability, God's put this burden on our heart to help. Let's help as many Americans, interpreters, their families, women and children that we can. And we've got a lot of credit over the last few months. I got recognized before Congress. I got the Bonhoeffer Angel Award. And the only thing I really accept credit for is the fact that when God put that burden on our heart, all of us were obedient to that call. And beyond that, we witnessed a divine miracle. I mean, 2 Corinthians 11:30 says, if you're going to boast in your weakness. And so I could certainly do that here because we were not qualified anyway to do what actually happened. I'm not smart enough. No one on our team was. We're not capable enough. We witnessed a divine miracle and a series of events over the next 3 days that made it possible to rescue these 17,000 people.
So you put together your team of special forces guys, and what happens? I mean, are you in contact with Aziz during this period?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm talking to Aziz. We're trying to make sure he's moving to safety, that he's staying safe while we're working to get move forward. There was several events that happened that if any one of them did not happen or a door was closed, this whole thing wouldn't have taken place. And each one of those would have been an impossibility. The first of which was Sarah Verardo calling the Joint Chiefs and asking for permission for us as civilian NGO to go onto the HKI airport, a DOD-controlled airport, land aircraft, go outside the wire, evacuate civilians, put them back in that airport. That's an impossibility for anyone around the military.
Yeah, you can understand that they're going to say, sorry, no, you can't do that. You're telling me
they said yes.
For some reason, they said yes.
Which is a miracle. And then secondly, now we have to figure out how to move them. I mean, you can't just put them on a plane and fly them to the United States. I'm not the State Department. And so we said, where can we bring these people to? And we called the UAE because we had some connections with the royal family there. Talked to them for about an hour. They rolled out the red carpet, said you could use our humanitarian center. We're going to provide doctors and medical care.
So wait, you had connections with the United Arab Emirates, and it was because of them that this you figured out how we can pull this off.
Where we could bring them to. That's right. Yeah. And then they said not only that, but we'll give you a C-17, the large military aircraft with pilots to do our first loads of people. And if you fill that up, we'll give you another one. And then the next day, this is all in 3 days, our friend Glenn Beck called, and Glenn Beck said, hey, I got on a microphone. That's all I could do. I thought I would raise some support, maybe a couple of $1,000. And in 3 days, I raised $21 million. Overall, he raised $46 million. And he's like, I don't know what to do with it. How can we help? And I said, man, I know exactly what to do with it. We're going to start chartering flights. And he put an amazing guy from his charity, Mercury One, named Rudy Atala, in connection with me. And we started chartering flights. And we went into Abu Dhabi, put our ground team and on the ground in HKIA, and we started evacuating people.
All right. So the good news is you set about to save your friend, and you end up doing so much more.
Makes my heart. I mean, yesterday he was in Times Square, seen his billboard on a picture in Times Square. It was the most amazing thing.
It is amazing. And the story needs to be told as a movie. I'm glad that it exists today as a book. Glenn Beck wrote the foreword. So let's get into it. How did you save Aziz? How did this begin? So
we get our team in Abu Dhabi. We have a team back in Washington, D.C. processing P1, P2, SIV visas and vulnerable people groups. We're building team packages and sending small teams outside the wire and 3-man teams to go in.
Now, when you say outside the wire, for a civilian like me,
off of the secured perimeter of the HKIA airport in Kabul, this thing was it was just damned from the beginning because the White House closed the Bagram Air Force Base, moved out our military, and controlled the airport, the civilian airport. They forfeited the secure airfield of Bagram Air Force Base with our equipment, our aircraft, the fortified position. They moved our military off before they moved civilians out, American civilians, before they moved out our interpreters, and before they moved our $85 billion in equipment. And then they basically locked themselves into the civilian airport with the military controlling the outer perimeter and the Taliban controlling the outer ring where people had to have access to. So who gets in and out of the airport? That's decided by the Taliban. And so we had to be able to get our teams outside of that to be able to get people and then sneak them back in. And we did that for about 10 days, getting Aziz out and about 12,000 people. And at the end of 10 days, that Abbey Gate blew up. 13 of our service members were killed. And that whole week, though, that whole 10 days was just nonstop. No one slept in Abu Dhabi, Washington, D.C., our teams there on the ground. My friend C-Spray lost 37 pounds in 10 days because he just didn't stop moving to get people. He just would not stop. He wouldn't eat. He wouldn't drink. He was just like, every time you stopped to do anything, you felt like you were trading 5 minutes for someone's life. And so it's that like level of imminent movement. But when the military left, and they didn't want to leave, by the way, our military didn't want to leave, but we didn't have to. They were forced to leave, but we didn't have to. And we realized at that time, the White House was saying there was 100 Americans left behind. And I'll say it without debate, there were thousands of Americans still there.
But when I hear what you did, Chad, you put yourself out there and your team put yourself out there, no one can ever thank you enough or do enough. I mean, this is heroic stuff. And I just feel honored to know that people like you exist in the world, much less I get to talk to you. But you were successful in saving Aziz, and you ended up saving thousands from the Taliban. Let's talk about that. I mean, you put yourself out there. You knew you're risking your own life. I want to say this, ladies and gentlemen. There are people risking their lives. You weren't even involved, in the military at this point. You're doing this on your own. You're saying, I just want to do this to save my friends.
I mean, like I said earlier, God burdened our hearts. It was the right thing to do. We had the capability, and I always believe that if you have the ability to do something and it's the right thing, then you have to act and do it. And so for me, we couldn't leave. We chose to stay. That led to a coalition effort with so many amazing organizations: Mercury One, my foundation, Mighty Oaks, and Save Our Allies, Task Force Argo, and Samaritan's Purse. Like, everybody was participating in this place called Mazar Sharif, and we got over another 2 months, we got about another 5,000 people out.
The fact that you put this into a book is really important because people need to know what is happening in the world, in the United States of America, and they need to know about people like you, Chad, because I think a lot of people are cynical. They don't think that there are any good guys out there. They don't think there's anybody who's willing to risk their life for what is right and good and true. And we're all called to live like that. And so you're an inspiration, and this story is an inspiration, and it just blesses me so deeply.
The great thing about this book is, it bugged me at first, but it actually makes me happy, is this book went to the Pentagon and was reviewed for 5 months. They held it for 5 months. And I was bugged by that. But then the things that they redacted, I left marked. So they marked in black so the American people could see what was redacted, and that information was withheld from them. Some of it was classified, and I agree. Some of it, I believe, was political. But nonetheless, what's left in there for you to read, you know that is true. And if you have a problem with anything you read in this book, then we need to be contacting our congressmen, our senators, and saying, hey, I'm not okay with this. There's still people left behind. There's still Americans there. There's still interpreters there. We need to push Congress to do the right thing. And these investigations opened up. This is the right time to read something like this and use your voice to speak up. I want to say this, and maybe it could be a good challenge to your listeners, because I think we all could use that. How this story changed me is that it gave me hope. I was so frustrated. I remember being in Abu Dhabi, standing in front of the royal family, and they were helping me evacuate Americans. And I stood in front of 5 generals, about 20 lawyers, and the Minister of Interior, and I had to apologize for our government. I was so embarrassed because I'm such a patriotic guy. I love our country. I had to apologize for our government for putting them in position to help, and I had to thank them for helping me rescue Americans. And I walked out of that boardroom down. I was like so depressed because I love our country. But then I thought for a second, you know what? Our country and our government failed, but right now, amazing Americans will stand up and do the right thing. So I think people should be able to find hope in knowing that when the governments of the world fail, including our own, people will stand up and do the right thing. And it was amazing to see that happen. And people from all walks. There's people that follow me on social media, just like they do you, that don't like me, they hate me. And they were sending, because they don't agree with me, and they were sending me messages like, I don't like you, but I love what you're doing, and where can I donate? And people were donating. People like from the left it was amazing. And we had this Jewish organization who wanted to pay for 2 planes. It was $1.5 million. And they went to make the donation to Mighty Oaks. And the guy called me back and he said, we can't make the donation. And I thought maybe I gave a routing number wrong. He said, no, you're a Christian organization and we're Jewish. We can't make that donation. I said, okay, but do you realize we're rescuing Muslims? And we laughed and he made the donation. And it was just it brought so much hope to me to see people come together for the love of other people and to do the right thing. And, sometimes in this world, we just have to put everything aside and do the right thing. And that's what I got most out of this. I want to say one more thing. We were just getting interviewed. This was Sea Spray, who's in this book for Afghanistan, but we're in Ukraine together. We've done 10 trips to Ukraine together since February. And he said, we were getting interviewed and we both said the answer to this, why are you going out there and doing this? And, simple answer is because it's the right thing to do. But then the reporter asked him a specific question I'd never heard before. Is it worth it? And he said, it doesn't have to be, right? It doesn't have to be worth it to do the right thing. I think as Americans, we're always looking for that ROI. Like if I invest my time, my energy, money, what am I getting out of it? It doesn't have to be worth it to do the right thing. And I think the world could use a little bit of that right now.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because if you have a biblical perspective, it says in the scripture, you can't outgive God, right? Mm-hmm. You cannot. God is saying, you do the right thing because I did the right thing for you, and you cannot imagine how I will pay you back. Mm-hmm. And for you to try to calculate it now, like how's this going to benefit me now? You're a fool. Yeah. Because you're going to live way longer than now. You're going to live in eternity. And that's the message. The message is you do the right thing because God calls you to do the right thing. And you know that the ROI, you're going to get infinitely more than you should when you do the right thing. This is an opportunity that we get, which is so beautiful, that we get to do the right thing, that we get to do things. Listen, we're out of time. Chad, I'm just, honored to know you and to have you with us here. The book is Saving Aziz. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.